So there's been about 4 months of the Trump presidentship, and Europe is going under quite a heavy shock therapy. Bill Robinson from Newsmax, thank you very much for attending Riks here and trying to enlighten us, the Swedish and European audience here, on what's going on in the United States right now with the relationship between the European Union, the sovereign nations of Europe and the United States. Welcome to Riks.
Thank you very much for having me, Jacob. You're a great patriot. And I've got to say, I'm smiling initially because in America, about 90% of the people, in truth, are happy and couldn't be happier that President Trump is, in the White House. Finally, we have somebody who is awake and aware and doing the right things and not apparently on a mission to destroy America. So that makes us smile a lot. At the same time, we are a little disturbed by the way the left in America continues to fight in an almost irrational, insane way. No, not almost, in an irrational, insane way against everything that's good, everything that represents American values and Judeo-Christian values and values of people that have any kind of spiritual belief at all. It really doesn't matter what it is. As long as you believe in a higher power, President Trump is gonna help you. And so I know you hear a lot of, I was just over in, I guess, the end of January for the mega conference in Brussels, Make Europe Great Again. And we're all, your American brothers and sisters are all supporting our European brothers and sisters. We really want you to have the kind of freedom and excitement and the joy of living under a really free government, a government that actually likes you and likes people. And so we're really excited about the developments that are going on over there. And it's really a function of your leaders. Georgia Maloney was over in the White House yesterday, and President Trump just described her as fantastic. And President Trump doesn't describe everybody as fantastic. So, and I saw her at Mar-a-Lago on January 4th, the president's estate in Florida, and I saw her with President Trump, and it was quite a funny picture because Trump's about 6'4" and she's about 5'0". And so they're standing next to each other. It was like frickin' frack, or a midget and a giant. But she's certainly no midget when it comes to her politics and her way of governing. I think she's an ideal populist, and I think Italy is going to be a leader. I think Nigel Farage continues to be a leader in the UK, although he should be the prime minister, but we've got this ruinous villain, Keir Starmer, there. And then we have, Viktor Orban in Hungary, and we've got, all these great, around the world is happening. You got Bukele, and you've got all these melee, all these different leaders who are common sense oriented, represent good versus bad, represent honorable versus evil. And so we're just so excited about what's going on, but we're also still fighting like hell.
It's because if you look at it, Trump's been in office for about 4 months right now, and there's been happening plenty of stuff. If we just first would do a comparison between his first, back in 2016 to 2020, his first term and this term, it seems to be quite a groundbreaking. There are no breaks now. He's pushing through, he's really doing a America First agenda. And how come that there is such a big difference between these two terms?
Well, I think his first term, he was a little naive, and that's a strange thing to say about President Trump. He's not normally naive. He's very pragmatic. He's willing to fight at the drop of a hat. He doesn't start fights, but he's a counterpuncher. If somebody says Donald Trump is a crook or whatever they're going to smear him with now, then he fights back and he says, well, you're a pedophile. He just wins the fight in one word or one sentence. So I think in the first, I think he understood how the deep state operated and the globalists in the United States, but I think he wasn't prepared for quite how entrenched they are. They burrow in like chiggers, and they're impossible to get out. And one of the worst offenders in this regard was Barack Obama. And they said he hired 1 million or 2 million people to work for the government. He hired 3 million people or more. So the number of Americans working for the U.S. government went from 1 or 2 million to 5 or 6 million. And most of these people were friends of his and no-show jobs. And, oh, yeah, you'll just get a huge paycheck and you'll stay home and you'll work another job. And it was an insane kind of way to do business. But that's Barack Obama and that's Joe Biden and, Bill Clinton and the whole American left. These people are beneath contempt. And so I think Trump, in the first administration, he didn't really understand how bad it was. He made a lot of progress on the border wall. And I think that that's got to be one of the first priorities for Europe, too. You've got to stop this immigration and you've got to start a mass deportation program. Of course, the left will be you can't deport people. These are all God's children. Well, they never care about God's children under normal circumstances. It's only when deporting criminals and people who contribute nothing to our society and, in fact, take away a lot more. So that's a big issue. He made some progress on that, but they fought him tooth and nail. They wouldn't give him the money. He had to take the money from the military budget and move it around. So he didn't finish the wall in his first 4 years. Right now, the wall is on, it's on a fast track to being finished. They're deporting people left and right from the big cities, which is where they really need to be deported. And then the economy, of course. The economy is really getting a lot better here. Eggs were $9 a dozen, which I guess is about 9 or 10 euros a dozen eggs. And already they're down $3.48 in 3 months of Trump, which is a massive reduction. The economies of both the EU and the member countries need to be improved quickly, or else there'll be an even bigger case along with immigration in Europe to destroy the EU and to get out from under the boot of this awful, greedy group of unelected bureaucrats with their boot on the neck of the real Europe, the Europe nations.
And if we look at this second term right now, there's been quite the relationship between Europe and United States, at least with European elite, has become quite a bit strange. J.D. Vance was at the security conference in Munich. That was an amazing speech he held there. But then he was talking about the new geopolitical shift in the view of the army. And of course, with the mass migration and the increasing censorship going on all around Europe and talking about the core values and everything. This sent a shock with the European elite. Then it has gone that way. Could you please explain this shift we see from this administration, that they are now telling Europe you need to have freedom of speech? If you look on how the European media portrays Donald Trump, he's an authoritarian fascist, but now they want to force us to adapt freedom of speech. How does it come? Why is this such an important question for the Trump administration?
It's not a case of Americans thinking we're so much better than Europeans. We're just going through these things a little earlier than you are. And for some reason, good people have fallen asleep in the United States. And really just kind of, okay, we're not allowed to post on social media. No, we better not do that. We'll be in Facebook jail. Or, we better not pray or sing hymns outside an abortion clinic because they'll take us to jail. All the different, we better not go to a Trump rally. They'll be watching, and better not go to January 6th and contest an obviously stolen election, because you'll go to jail for years. I just interviewed one of the J6ers who's been released. He was in prison for 4 years and 4 days without a trial. And so, and they kept moving him around. So things were so bad in America right before this election. And that's why God Almighty, if you believe in such a concept, he had to have Trump win. That's the only way I can explain it, because the Democrats in our country are so good at stealing elections. You see what has happened over in Romania, where a guy won the election as president, Georgescu, and then all of a sudden, oh no, we're going to just annul the election and try again. What? This is not consistent with any generalized understanding of freedom. So I think that we had the good fortune to have President Trump come in. Now everybody's like, oh, wait, we can post to Facebook. We could go to Trump rallies if he was still having them. He's not having them right now. I wish he would continue to have them in his presidency. But, it's just it's a wake up call. And I think there's so many millions of people. There are many people like you and our friend Scarlett and all these other people in Europe that are so hungry for freedom and so tired of the constant bullshit. It just continues. And it won't stop until you get a new leader in. And so we're just so excited for you with this. And there's already the deep state, the elites, the globalists, whatever you want to call them. They're rotten people, right? I mean, you wouldn't want them to pet your dog. Your dog would shy away, right? I mean, Klaus Schwab, no thank you. Emmanuel Macron, I mean, come on, Napoleonic complex, much? It's just too much. So once you get a leader like this in, and I'm sure this is happening in Hungary for the last several years, and I'm sure since Brexit, although the media is pecking away on the English and saying Brexit was bad, Brexit was bad, Brexit was bad, Brexit was the best thing England could have done. So I think that already the globalists, the deep state, the elite, the depopulation crowd, the defunding crowd, the redistribution of wealth crowd, they're so scared because they're such cowards. And that's one of the great things about this battle. Evil is stupid. It's certifiably stupid. So they don't come up with any interesting innovations. They don't do anything differently. They just keep doing the same thing, hammering away at good people and being mean to everybody who might disagree with them in the slightest. So I think you look at people like Klaus Schwab, whom I've met. You look at people like even Putin, I think, is changing his tune a little bit. Certainly Xi in China. But you look at the Trilateral Commission, the Club of Rome, the Bilderbergs, the World Economic Forum, and Schwab, as I said, and they're all freaking out because they thought they had it all together and they thought we were all going to be eating bugs and eating plant-based meats and, the whole you will have nothing and be happy about it. I mean, this insanity had to stop. And it looks like, I say optimistically, that's over.
Yeah, because if you look at the reaction and one of the two, of course, there are two pressing concerns, at least with the European perspective. One is the Trump administration's view on the current ongoing war in Ukraine. I mean, with the current geopolitical shift that the US government, well, you guys have been talking about it for the last couple of decades. China is going to be the strategic threat towards us, and you don't view Russia as a geopolitical threat in that sense. But of course, for the many European people that are worried about the war going on in Europe right now, a more aggressive Russia in that sense, what do you have to say to them that feel like, because if you look at the European media or Swedish media, people will say Trump is an asset for Vladimir Putin. Of course, that's not something, we read the Russiagate and everything back in the United States, the previous term. But what do you say for the people in Europe that are feeling worried about, okay, Europe is more destabilized than ever, and now we have American new government that is looking towards China as a strategic threat towards them, and Europe stands on their own. That's the feeling, at least if you read the European press. What's your take on that?
Well, so the wars are I think that they, Trump had said during his rallies in the run up to his historic re-election and the campaign of 2024, he had said, we've got to end these wars. The endless wars have to stop. And I wrote an article, in fact. I've been interviewing the president since January of 2023, and it's been the privilege of a lifetime. I've really gotten a good sense of what kind of person he is. And he's not perfect. He's a sinner like we all are. But he is he's humanity's best hope. And if there are other humanity's best hope, like Giorgia Meloni and like Viktor Orban, and I'm waiting and hoping for someone to come out of Sweden that's a populist and is going to say, let's get rid of the 72% tax rates and let's get rid of the big government's going to take care of everybody thing. I mean, that's just off the charts bad. I think that, the world's going to come together and we're going to eliminate all the terrible people somehow we've let take over our governments. With regard to the ends of the war, Trump is very one article I wrote was Trump started zero wars and how he did it. And he was the only American president ever to start zero wars. I mean, exactly zero, not one half of a war or one war. He started zero wars. And I think he's grown in that desire on his part. So he's saying things that politicians and world leaders have never said before. He said, the fighting in Ukraine must stop. The killing must stop. I'm tired of seeing innocent people killed. It's got to stop. And when a president says that, it's never been said before, but when a president says that, you get a feeling that he has a strong desire and a higher power is propelling him to solve this war. During the rallies and lead up, he was saying he'll solve that war in 24 hours. Now, that's Trump braggadocio, and that's one of the things that we love about Trump. And now I have my liberal friends saying to me, well, he didn't solve it in 24 hours. And I said, how about if he solves it in 6 months? Would that be good enough for you? How about if he solves it in 3 months? Would you be all right with that? Or that's not good enough, you're still going to be mad at him? So I think there's no question he's going to stop this war. And, and then when you take into account things that haven't been publicized, like he's outlawed the Ukrainian Orthodox Church and he's not allowing elections. And I mean, bagmen going over the border to Belarus and Poland with millions of dollars in suitcases and stuff. I mean, it's just crazy. And he just wants more money. And it's all a fool's errand. It's all a folly. Nobody's ever beaten Russia in a war. Hitler couldn't beat them. Napoleon couldn't beat them. Everybody gets crushed. So what's the point? Trump has the right attitude about Putin and Russia. As long as Putin is in there, and I'm sure he would prefer to have somebody else, but we have to deal with the realities of here and now. As long as Putin's in there, it's better to talk to him and deal with him, throw sanctions at him, take away his oil sales. That's really, you can destroy the Russian economy by taking away their oil and natural gas. That's why he's already opening up the American supplies of oil and natural gas. And we have more than Saudi Arabia or any country in the world, Russia certainly. And so we can sell the natural gas to Europe and to keep Ukraine warm in the winter and Western Europe warm in the winter with gas that isn't given with some kind of blackmail. I also think that, the Hamas thing is going to be settled pretty soon. The problem is they keep sending back live people, and they haven't started on the dead bodies yet. They sent back 4 dead bodies of one family, which included children. What could speak worse of these people than that? They're sending back dead children. Now they're still holding on to a few hostages, so they're trying to get as much as they can get. But I know what Trump's doing. Trump is going to go in and absolutely destroy Hamas as soon as we get the rest of the living hostages out of there. He is going to go in and they'll say, but the deal was, and he'll say, sorry. And he'll push the red button on Hamas. We've got to get rid of those people. And I mean, this isn't the Jews against the Palestinians. The Palestinians are relatively reasonable people, although I did meet Yasser Arafat and he wasn't reasonable at all. But I think the real problem is Hamas. We got to get Hamas out of there. They're the real militants. The Palestinians can be pretty tough too. But I think that by and large, if Trump can get rid of Hamas and start to bring some economic sanity, he was talking about, Gaza by the sea and Gaza as a tourist destination. That's because he thinks big. He's a builder and he has a vision. So I think the wars will be over relatively soon.
But if we look at the ongoing situation, there were reports just this week about Israel wanted to strike Iran, and some members of the Trump cabinet, including Tulsi Gabbard and J.D. Vance, was supposedly opposed to it, and it doesn't seem that the United States intend to take any actions. Is that with the limitation with the Trump policy that he wants to aid wars in that sense, or do you think we will see a more increased hostility towards Iran and perhaps even an all-out war happening in that region as well?
No, but if there was, we'd end it quickly because the people over there are poised to topple, the mullahs and the theocratic regime there, which is one of the most awful in the world. Obviously, it's arguably worse than President Xi and Putin in Iran. But I think you got to listen to where it's coming from, and you just got to take a quick look at where all that. They're going to bomb Iran. I mean, it's constantly with the media and the left here, the Democrats. They're very weak people. So it's always about we're all going to die. The world's coming to an end, right? It was that way with the scamdemic and COVID. It was that way with, we've got to mask up or it's going to kill everybody. No, it all turned out to be lies. And then it turned out it's always with the economy. They're cutting Medicaid and Social Security, and they're always lying about everything, and they always make up these fake fear mongering issues. And so I think that where I heard all that coming from is like MSNBC and CNN and all the fake news organizations. Trump went through this in his first term. John Bolton, who has now been exposed as a total fraud and a creep and a man who's somewhat like Joe Biden, a little brain damaged. He was working with the National Security Council and trying to go off and do a mission in Iran that might have started a war with Iran. Well, Steve Bannon and the president found out about this, and they stopped it immediately. So I think that, obviously J.D. Vance and Tulsi Gabbard and John Ratcliffe and Pete Hegseth and all these people would be like, wait a second, let's clean up the first two wars that the rest of the world has started and the Biden administration started. I mean, directly Biden. Blame Biden. These are Biden's wars. And let's clean up those two wars before we go trotting off to Iran. Iran can be brought to heel by destroying their economy and ruining and angering their people. Their people, as I said before, are ready to pounce on their illegitimate government and to destroy those people and do what they did to Mussolini at the end of World War II. So I think that whole Iran thing, just like the whole tariffs thing. Oh, they're doing tariffs. They're going to destroy Europe. No, we're not going to destroy Europe. Let me just explain to you one thing about America and Europe. And England always says we have the special relationship. There's a special relationship with all of Europe too. We are the defenders of Western civilization. Just like the Knights Templar going to fight the Muslims in Jerusalem, just like, the Allies during World War II. We have to lock arms across the Atlantic and represent everything that's good in this world, because virtually everywhere else is rotten and evil. So we have to stick together, and we're not going to tariff you into the Stone Age. That's not what Trump's trying to do. This is really about a couple of things. This is really about, they say Trump's playing 5D chess. Yeah, he is. There's no question about that. I've spoken to this guy. I have a fairly good sense. I'm not his best friend. I have a fairly good sense of what he's thinking and what he's doing. He's always got a really clever ulterior motive. So the tariffs are first and foremost about China.
When you mention the tariffs, of course, if we look at the current situation with China, where how large are they now? 180% tariffs that the United States have on China, and then China decided to respond on that. Have Trump bitten off more than he can chew on this? I mean, he made that electronics and everything. He was able to not have tariffs on that. The US has, with globalists, become extremely dependent on Chinese manufacturing. Has Trump bitten off more than he can chew on this?
I don't think so. I don't think Trump ever bites off more than he can chew. Now, that doesn't mean he doesn't make mistakes, but I think he's in a great position here. China makes crap. We don't really need their crap. And so this can very quickly blow back on China if they're not careful. And I think she is very afraid now too. And so, second biggest economy. I'm sorry. The U.S. is like 39% of the total planet Earth's GDP. And we buy like 28% of all the products. I mean, we're 28% of consumer demand. So we're still a superpower. We don't necessarily want to have to throw our weight around, but against China and Russia and Iran, yeah, we're going to throw our weight around. So when China makes crap, and I refer back to like 2007, they made a bunch of toys. Mattel, our biggest toy manufacturer, was making toys, and everybody was going to China. That was a byproduct of Bill Clinton and his stupidity with NAFTA. We lost 90,000 factories in America because of Bill Clinton, right? When he was doing all those rotten things to interns in our White House. I think, around that time, there was a huge scandal because they were sending Mattel toys painted with lead in them, and our kids were getting sick. That we should have frozen it right there and said, hold on a second, this is not a good idea. China makes crap because their people aren't well educated. A lot of them don't speak the same language. There are 400 different different dialects in Mandarin alone. So these people can't speak to each other. It's not a unified market. They buy nothing from America. So we have, given that they buy nothing from us, they can't hurt us. we can destroy them. Another example of that, of how the tariffs will work, is people like the people on the left, the people with like getting in. So Kellyanne Conway had a great descriptor of the left in America. And I'm pretty sure it's kind of similar in Europe. And that was, she said, for Democrats, every day is like Groundhog Day. It's deja vu every day. They get up thinking about January 6th. They get in their Priuses and they go get an abortion. And that was just a perfect assessment of the mindset of the Democrats. So the Democrats immediately started saying, oh, the tariffs, what's going to happen to our guacamole? What about avocados from Mexico? We won't be able to get any more avocados. So here's the reality of avocados in America. The best avocados come from California. Why we were buying them from Mexico, I have no idea. And you can go through product category after product category after SKU after SKU after SKU. And it's the same way. It's like what we get from abroad is typically not from the EU, but from these kind of third world countries. And China is really a third world country. In spite of all the China is going to take over the world. China, they're so smart and clever. They're smarter than us. No, they're not. They're a bunch of bunglers. And their government is just definitely evil. So I think that Trump's playing a long game here, but it's happening much faster than anybody thought. The 80 countries that came to him, he's going to make great deals with them, and they're going to be very happy. But they've got to start paying some tariffs when they come into our market. Our market is the world's most desirable market, followed closely by the EU. And if you were to do such a thing as install tariffs, real good tariffs, rewarding the good countries and penalizing the bad countries, that's what tariffs are for, then you would see a total global economic change. Well, not global, an EU economic change. And hopefully that won't be EU much longer, because you got to get rid of the EU. We can talk more about that in a minute. But I think that what Trump is trying to do here, and the entire globalist monolithic community is freaking out. He's going for a total global economy reset. And that means that's only going to mean good things for people who are middle income and the middle class, because the left always tries to destroy the middle class. And it's going to be good things for poor people and the poverty stricken. It won't be good things for the super rich.
You can see as the Trump administration is now rolling back on 50 years of globalization after Richard Nixon opened the trade deals with China. And as you stated with NAFTA, where the manufacturing base of the United States have moved overseas or to different countries on your continent. Still, it's quite, you get quite a bit of people talking about that Trump is an idiot because free trade has given us prosperity. And now he's risking to dismantle everything here. That's basically one of the talking points. You notice in this, don't you feel like this is going to be counterproductive? You're talking about, and of course, I'm a Swedish nationalist. I hope of a Europe of nations and not a more consolidated European Union. But as we can see now, the tendency is that we'll probably see a more solidified European Union as a response to the new American view on trade and security and everything. Isn't this going to be counterproductive towards the American foreign policy goals?
I don't think so, because people, humans, not tariffs or trade or anything like that, global trade war. This isn't a trade war. This is nothing like a trade war. I think that it's not going to be counterproductive, because the people who are saying Trump is an idiot are the same idiots who've been trying to, impeach him and get him arrested and put him in jail for the rest of his life. That's why it's so important he won this election. Everybody has to realize if he hadn't won this election, he'd be spending the rest of his life in jail. And so that's the overarching reality of President Trump being reelected. But the more grounded part of President Trump being elected is that he's putting this country through incredible change that's necessary. And we've all been fighting in a reactive way. Like whenever Europe is like, I remember I was living in England a couple decades ago, and they were always talking about the EU's trying to control the kind of sausages they're eating. Or France is complaining about what the EU is doing with wine and tariffs. Well, the EU isn't a real organization. It doesn't really exist, and it doesn't really do anything. It just leeches money and taxes and tariffs and everything they can get off of the member states of the European countries themselves. So it doesn't really do anything. The analogy I like to use is, can you imagine if the United States was run by the United Nations? Can you imagine? We would never let it happen. And Trump would never let it happen. The Democrats would let it happen. Jimmy Carter would let it happen. Bill Clinton would let it happen. Barack Obama, Joe Biden. All of these weak, incompetent people and evil people would let that happen. So you've got yourself in a real situation in Europe. It's a tough situation. But a revolution, I'm not talking about storming the Bastille, a revolution of thought and a revolution of ideas on the internet and a revolution, yes, in the streets a little bit, but there doesn't need to be any bloodshed. These are going to be bloodless revolutions that are going to come, and they'll happen swift and mercilessly. And you guys have been suffering under this horrible EU thing. I mean, I was talking to some of the members of the European Parliament. I'm like, don't you just want to go back to your country, Holland, and be a government official? Aren't you tired of this like fraud? You're representing all of Europe, or that all of Europe is even together. I mean, you've had 2 world wars in the last last century or so. I mean, you don't agree on anything. So, it's very difficult, but now you can find something to agree on. And I love that. You can all agree on what freedom is, and getting rid of censorship and stealing other people's money and taxation without representation. And just, they've infiltrated our schools, our churches. They've infiltrated our government in every single way. And so I think the fight is on. I think it's a good fight. I think it's better than sitting back than the way we were. We were like docile, right? I mean, like there were a few people fighting and there were a lot of patriots around. But, by and large, the bigger masses were not engaged. And that's the beauty of what Trump's accomplished in this last election. He got 46% of the vote in New Jersey, and he got 43% of the vote in New York City. He won the youth vote. He won the Black American vote. He won the Hispanic vote. He won the Asian vote, which he usually wins anyway. He won like 100% of the vote of, they don't have this as a survey or a statistic, but he won 100% of the vote of people who moved to America from communist countries. 100%. There's nobody who came from a communist country who didn't vote for Trump, because that would be so damaging to their own interests. So, I think, yes. So with change comes a little pain and always discomfort. But I think so Meloni said with Trump yesterday, the press was grilling them about tariffs, and she said, well, yeah, we're going to come to an agreement on tariffs, but also the press pointed out afterwards that she can't do anything without the EU. Wouldn't it be great if Prime Minister Meloni just said, I don't know if this is going to happen, but it makes sense to me, if she just said, Italy's going to conduct its own negotiations on tariffs with the United States. We're bypassing the EU on this. And I see that as a fundamental move, which might eventually lead to other countries doing the same on tariffs, and then maybe on other issues too. Defense, armament. You don't need to rebuild NATO. You don't need, I know Trump wants to get the countries in Europe to pony up more of their defense budgets to NATO. But really, if you guys all had America's support and you all banded together and put together your own European defenses instead of NATO, I think that would be a great idea. But you got to get rid of the EU. And I'd love to see some kind of snowballing effect of, no, we're going to negotiate directly with President Trump on behalf of Italy. And we don't trust Ursula von der Leyen, and we don't trust the EU.
And one other thing that's been written quite a bit on this week is about the subject of academic freedom, that the Trump administration is threatening to withhold funding to some of the prestigious Ivy League school. If you look at Europe right now, the trans madness has been a cultural export from the Anglo-Saxon world, and especially the United States. We have seen woke and other different topics such as that's destabilizing our countries. It's been a large cultural export from just the United States. Now they seem to do a crackdown on this type of woke industries from the prestigious schools. Could you please elaborate a bit more? What's going on? Is this an attack on academic freedom, or what's the reason behind this?
No, it's not an attack on economic freedom at all. You see, a lot of the things you hear over there, whether it's coming, I don't know whether it's coming from social media or Sky News or the BBC in particular as an American hating media source. I don't know. It's kind of goes all the way back to we used to be their colony and then we broke away and became the biggest country in the world, while their navy and everything in their entire country has been going down the toilet. They resent that. And it's a shame. I'm of English ancestry, but I got to say that whenever you hear something, you've just got to really say, let me think about that for a second. No, that can't be true. If the same media is pushing the same lies to you, at some point you get used to the fact that they're just lying to you and you stop listening. This morning, they announced that the Department of Homeland Security is withholding $2.7 million from Harvard University. Now, Harvard University has an endowment of about $70 billion. Harvard's going to be okay if we keep $2.7 million of our taxpayer money from giving it to these people who are destroying our children. They hate Jews. They hate America, too. Trump and CNN went back and forth about this over the last few days. Trump says CNN hates America. It's indisputably true. And they're like, oh, no, we love America. Okay, well, what's the complete absence of American flags or any pride or anything there? And so, these universities are all greedy slums of evil where they take our children and they fill their minds with poison about what conservatism is, what Republicans are, what white men are. Heterosexual white men are the biggest enemy on the campus. Really? Wow. How would our country have even started without heterosexual white men? It's crazy. So this thing with our universities, there's a big movement in the U.S. not even to send kids to college. It used to be when I was a kid, my dad was like, you got to go to college or else you'll never amount to anything. Well, I went to college and I enjoyed it and I finished it and I got my degree. And it's like, so they're starting to question the whole infrastructure of academics. Our academics have been lackluster and wastes of taxpayer money for a long time. These universities charge enough money to live on their own. They're like PBS and NPR, National Public Radio and Public Broadcasting TV. They're funded with $500 million every year from the U.S. government, from the taxpayer, and they do nothing but spread poison. So the same thing is true of the universities. They charge $70,000, $100,000 a year for a student to go, and that's not including books and dorm and food and everything else. So parents are having a hard time justifying it when they can send their kids to a trade school and they can learn plumbing and then earn $150 an hour and then get 5 vans and then grow it into 100 vans. And before you know it, they're millionaires from plumbing. And so instead of starting out as a peon in a big corporation or in a Wall Street bank or investment firm or a consulting company. So I think that that's all, but it's going to get worse because now Trump's trying to take away their tax exempt status. These universities like Princeton, oh my gosh, Princeton is the worst. They question everything. They question God doesn't exist at Princeton. You're not allowed to believe in God at Princeton. Everything's about transgender. The left has taken, a group of less than 1% of really unfortunate, sick people who are unsure whether they're men or women or boys or girls. And they've turned it into a huge industry with big med, big pharma, big psych. And so they're actually going for more. They're doubling down on all of this. So the universities are not good. And Trump is going to strip away. He's just talked about it. He's going to strip away their tax exempt status. That is typically only offered to real nonprofits that feed people, feed hungry people, or churches that feed people spiritual food. And those things are the only things that should be tax exempt in the United States. Trump is going to take that away. Why do they need to be tax exempt? Why does Harvard need to be tax exempt when they have $70 billion in an endowment? It's just like sitting there in a bank account. And so $2.7 million isn't going to hurt them, but what's coming next will hurt them.
And as a final, to summarize everything, because as I stated in the beginning, Trump's been in office for almost 4 months now. What can we look forward for the upcoming 3 years and 8 months? is it possible that he can do even more? I mean, we're seeing a rollback on globalism. We're seeing a huge shift in the relationship and how they want Europe to act in the future. We're seeing massive decreases in immigration, illegal immigration to the United States. He's really pushing through a big, almost a revolution in that sense in American politics. What's left to do in his upcoming 3 years and 8 months?
There's so much left to do. We've got to get rid of the climate change nutcases. That's being done right now. We've got them burning Teslas. So, I mean, it's another example of the left eating themselves. I love it. I love the cannibalism of the left. You know, the way they treated Tulsi Gabbard when she left the Democrat Party. I interviewed her and I told her, you're going to be running as a Republican in 5 years. And that was 5 years ago. I had no idea she wouldn't be running as a Republican. She'd be working with Trump. And, you know, the whole thing is such a miracle with RFK and the food. We have a lot to look forward to with saving our kids with the food, getting the fluoride out of our water, which is lowering IQs. They've been telling us since the 1930s, oh, it keeps your teeth good. No, it doesn't keep your teeth good. And they're like, well, the English don't put fluoride in their water. Yeah, the English have bad teeth because they drink so much tea. It has nothing to do with fluoride in the water. Fluoride is a toxin and a poison that is really powerful. And so Bobby Kennedy and Maha, Make America Healthy Again, they're going to do tremendous things in terms of the vaccinations, in terms of this, you know, this Nuremberg 2.0. We're going to make sure we go after Fauci. So the accountability in healthcare, in health, in ridding the deep state, getting the deep state insects that have burrowed into our government out. Tulsi Gabbard's going to do that with the Department of Justice and Pam Bondi. So there's all these different things to work on. President Trump isn't against electric vehicles. It's just so much a better option for now is hybrids. That's the better option. And all the car companies over here are moving towards that. I mean, I know Volvo makes electric vehicles now, but people aren't going to be buying them. It's going to crash and burn, that whole electric vehicle, the mandates and everything. That's going to change. But I think the biggest change is people are going to be held accountable here. We're going to start dragging people off in handcuffs, like Fauci, like a lot of the people who've been involved in this transgender nonsense. So if you're a guidance counselor at an elementary school and you're, instead of helping kids understand what they might be doing when they grow up, which is what guidance counselors used to do, you're starting to help them question and confuse them about their gender, their sex. I mean, it's not even gender. You're creating confusion around their sex, their chromosomal makeup, by God Almighty. And they're going to start dragging some of these people off to jail. Okay. And I think the accountability, Trump is going to start making people pay. The forced vaccinations, that's clearly a violation of Nuremberg rules. And we got to start employing that. So I think it's going to be a real house cleaning in America. And I think obviously you got to do a house cleaning. The house cleaning has started already with the deportations of the illegal aliens and the criminals. Even if they were good people coming here with good intentions, they committed a crime by coming into our country illegally. They have to go. And I think if you can take the same tough line with illegal immigrants in your countries, and I know, you know, in Stockholm, you've got so much crime and so many illegal immigrants. It's like our countries don't even look like us anymore. They've been invaded. And so I think there's a lot of big changes coming, especially for Europe too, because you guys are really coming along. And I think you're really, you're going out there and having these conversations with people. And we just look forward to working with you and encouraging your leaders to do the same kinds of things that President Trump is doing, to use his playbook, to be as aggressive as possible about saving your continent and saving your individual countries. It's so imperative.
Thank you so much, Bill Robinson, for commenting on what's happening in the world right now.
Thank you so much for having me, Jacob. You're a great patriot, and I love what you're doing with your network. Please keep growing it.